We hear so many facts. Is this fact true or not true? And as I work with people, the first thing I do is I make them actually Google what percentage of my daily actions are unconscious. And so then they will see it in big dark letters. It's just really clear. But I also see it's one thing to sort of conceptually understand an idea, but that doesn't mean people actually go and do anything about it. And I see that the next level to really get understanding is let me ask your audience, what do you do to impact those unconscious daily actions? Do you do anything? And I think most people would go, well, no, I wasn't even sure that was true until maybe now. But once someone really gets that, because that was the most fundamental, important thing I ever learned, was that 95% of my daily actions are unconscious. Once I got that through my thick head and saw the implication that, that's the only way to have a higher level of success is to influence those unconscious daily actions by proactively influencing the subconscious mind. Once I got that clear, everything changed and everything then made sense.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP. Mary Lou Kaiser here. Welcome to another episode of the Play Your Position podcast. Today is going to be a really great day here at PYP because I have a guest who is going to take you into the backstory of how to make the most of your life from a lot of these different kinds of bits and pieces of information that we get all the time online. But John Mitchell has really figured out how to help people get what they want in as little as 12 minutes a day. He is coming to us from the big and bold state of Texas. John, are you ready for kickoff?
Absolutely.
Yes. So John's story is pretty amazing. After spending 20 years as an entrepreneur, he was 50 years old, but wasn't as successful as he thought he should be. To rectify that, he decided to find the top book in the world on success and apply that book literally word for word to his life. That book is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And in that book, Hill says there's a secret for success, but the author only gives you half the secret. John figured out the full secret and a 12-minute-a-day technique to apply it. And he's going to be talking about that today. Once he started doing that, guys, everything changed in his life, from his income increasing to over $5 million a year after 20 years in that $200,000 to $300,000 per year range. And he has just gone on to help so many people. In fact, he was featured on the cover of Time magazine. So that says a lot. He currently teaches his system at the University of Texas's McCombs School of Business, which is one of the top 5 business schools in the country. And he's also the mental coach for the head athletic coaches at the University of Texas. So John, boy, you have got so much to share with us today. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule to talk to me and Team PYP.
Hey, thanks for having me. I love what you're doing. I really do.
It's great. Yeah, it's great. So let's get into the details here. Tell us about when you got the call to leadership, John. What's your story of becoming the mental coach for the head athletic coaches at UT, and also just the amazing transformation you experienced when you discovered the other half of Napoleon Hill's secret?
Right. Well, I'll add a little to what you said in terms of my story. So, I'm 50 and I'm not as successful as I think I should be. And I'm like, how do I change that? And it comes to me, take the top book in the world on success and apply it literally word for word to my life. And so, I do a little research. I discover that there's one book that's been read by 100 million people, and the next best-selling book on success, been read by less than 10 million people. And that book is Think and Grow Rich. And so, of course, I'm like, well, here we go. That's exactly what I'm looking for. And I'm thinking it's clear sailing now. And so I read the book, and like you said, he says there's a secret for success, but he only gives you half of the secret. And so Mary Lou, I mope around for probably 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm sort of bummed out. And then one day I just get up and I go, John, just man up and figure out the full secret. And so I then immerse myself in the book for probably 2 months, and I figure out the full secret and a 12-minute a day technique to apply it. And so I started applying it. And as you mentioned, my income starts doubling to where 4 years later, I was blessed to be making $5 million net a year after like 20 years of, like you said, 200,000 or 300,000 a year. So it was a 25-time increase. And it was amazing because for the first time ever, I was influencing my autopilot, and I could just do things that I couldn't do before. It truly is a superpower. It worked because I was focused only on what moves the needle. I had tripled my discipline, and I consistently had new ideas coming to my head every week that weren't coming in before. And so, sort of wrap this up, I just became fascinated with how you could take 2 key scientific principles and apply them to your life and so materially impact your success. And so I sold my company, and about a month or 2 after I sold my company, I meet the former Chancellor and President at the University of Texas. And he says, hey, you got to teach this at Texas, and why don't we teach it together? So that was 7 years ago, and that launched sort of sharing it with the world.
Wow. So people listening I'm like on the edge of my seat, like, what is this 12-minute a day technique? Can you take us into, you're out there on your great playing field of life, and you struggled along. It's not that your life was bad. It's just,
right.
To your point, it was like your life wasn't what you thought it could be. And I think that's very true for a lot of people. It's like you feel like you're going along, I did everything I was, air quotes, supposed to do, and I'm still not where I thought I'd be at this point. So take us inside the playbook.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll give you a little backstory. So you hear what's going on at 50. Well, the backstory to it, and I think this is probably pivotal, is that so at 50, I'm not as successful as I think I should be. And I'm very displeased with that. But at the same time, and I'm living in Dallas at the time, my mom is dying of pancreatic cancer. And so I remember every day going to the hospital after work to see her, and I'd spend, a couple hours with her, and then I'd walk in that dark parking lot at night, and I just cry my eyes out. And, of course, I didn't want her to see that because she would know that she's dying. But I also saw, I'm crying my eyes out for a couple of reasons. First, I'm losing my mom, and that's clear. But even deeper than that, my mom and dad did so much for me. They sent me to like Jesuit high school in Dallas, and it cost money, and they didn't have, all that much money. And I'm just sitting there going, my parents gave me so much, yet all I have is an average life. I'm not making a dent in the world. And now I look back and I see that pain from losing my mom and feeling whatever that feeling of not honoring her to the level I should have was the factor that made me go and dig deeper into Think and Grow Rich than maybe anybody on the planet. And now I see how powerful that motivation was. And I don't know, does that make sense?
It does. Like how many stories do we hear of people who hit that critical low right? That inflection point where you realize I had like, there's something bigger than yourself saying you have to change. It's easy to push when things are just okay. We trick ourselves, don't we? We tell ourselves all kinds of stories, and that you reached a point, it sounds like, where you said, enough, I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore. And so then what happened?
Well, so, then I dig into Think and Grow Rich. And what's interesting, Mary Lou, about it is a couple of things. Think and Grow Rich suggests applying science to your life to up your success. The science of the human mind, basically, to leverage yourself, which is an idea that very few people have ever thought of applying, yet it's the central idea of the top book in the world on success. And so one of the things that I realized is the book is based on one central premise, that 95% of your daily actions are unconscious. And so think about this. If that's true, and it is, you can Google it, but if that's true, the only way for you to have a higher level of success than you currently have is to influence those unconscious daily actions. I mean, it's pure math, right?
It's pure math.
And so let me ask you a question. Do you really believe that 95% of your daily actions are unconscious?
Not anymore, because I've done work, but I also I understand how powerful paradigms are, and the unconscious paradigms that drive us, the whole generational stuff. I mean, it's all stems from this book that you're talking about, Think and Grow Rich. And I'm just, as a side note, team, if you have not read this book, get it. I will put a link to it in the show notes page. It is an absolute must in everybody's library, and study it the way John did and the way I have, because what you're saying, John, is absolutely 100% true. We're never taught how to think about our mind.
Right. Well, and this is something I've learned over the last maybe year or so. We hear so many facts. Is this fact true or not true? And as I work with people, the first thing I do is I make them actually Google what percentage of my daily actions are unconscious. And so then they will see it in big dark letters. It's just really clear. But I also see it's one thing to sort of conceptually understand an idea, but that doesn't mean people actually go and do anything about it. And I see that the next level to really get understanding is let me ask your audience, what do you do to impact those unconscious daily actions? Do you do anything? And I think most people would go, well, no, I wasn't even sure that was true until maybe now. But once someone really gets that, because that was the most fundamental, important thing I ever learned, was that 95% of my daily actions are unconscious. Once I got that through my thick head and saw the implication that, yeah, that's the only way to have a higher level of success is to influence those unconscious daily actions by proactively influencing the subconscious mind. Once I got that clear, everything changed and everything then made sense. And so that's why I want to drive that point past the conceptual understanding of it to a deeper level with your audience.
Oh yeah, it's all, that first step really is awareness. Hearing
Right.
that statistic, right? That 95%, and it's staggering when you think about, like, I'm only in charge of 5% actively. Really, that's
Right.
it. But it is true. It is 100% true, and it's only once you have that knowledge that you can then say, well, what do I do next? If I'm not happy, if I'm not satisfied with where my life is at this point, what is it that I can do to influence the subconscious, which is
Right.
unbelievably powerful and does not want us to change. The subconscious does not want us to change. It will fight us. until tooth and nail,
Right.
know? Yep.
Well, and I'll share something with you. This is a superpower. When you can control your autopilot, I'm telling you, it's a superpower. And I'll give you an example of this. And this happened not too long ago. It's back around Christmas. And I decided to go see a client of mine in San Antonio, which is about an hour or so from Austin. And so I'm going to get Ginger, my wife, to go with me. And we're out and about. So I tell her, hey, Jen, just meet me at Starbucks at 2:00 and we'll meet up and jump in my car and go. So I get to Starbucks a little early and I decide, hey, it's Christmas. I'm going to have a brownie. So I get a brownie. And part of this 12-minute a day technique that I have, I feed to myself every day. I'm aware of everything I put in my mouth. Well, I start eating that brownie and I'm aware of it. I'm also aware that it's not very good, but that doesn't stop me from finishing it, so I eat it and Ginger comes and we jump in my car and I notice about 30 minutes later, I'm like, I'm not very, very hungry and I don't feel all that good. And so I get home that night and I'm like, I'm going to change my visualization template by one word. Instead of aware of everything I put in my mouth, I'm going to evaluate everything I put in my mouth. Oh. Well, next night, Ginger and I go out and have Mexican food with her son. And so I order tacos. The tacos come. Well, they're not very good, except this time I'm evaluating everything I put in my mouth and I slide them away. This is not going on consciously. It's happening unconsciously. And, when I got at home that night and was thinking about that, I'm like, wow, if that's not a superpower, I don't know what one is. If you can actually control your autopilot to where the right actions happen automatically without thinking. And,
yes.
Of course, I originally created this because I saw that I had to take my income to netting 7 figures a year to have the exceptional life I wanted, as materialistic as that no doubt sounds. But, and so, I originally created it for creating the right things to go on in my head automatically without thinking to impact my income. Like, as an example, I realized once I crossed over to netting 7 figures a year, you got to figure out what moves the needle and in your business. And once I figured that out and I'm feeding that to myself every day, guess what? I'm solely focused on what moves the needle. And I begin to understand deeper and deeper what moves the needle. So that's why it sort of affects all aspects of your life, your health, your business, your romantic relationship. And it truly is a superpower.
It is. Well, speaking of romantic relationships, I know in another conversation you shared with me that you met the love of your life later in life. And I think there are people listening who may not yet have met that special someone. So can you talk about how you really taking on this new way of thinking and this active process, this 12-minute a day technique, led you to meet, her name is Ginger?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at 50, I'm like, I realized I wanted to get married. Enough of dating. I mean, I had dated every girl in Dallas. I was convinced. And, so I did a lot of interviewing, although my friends probably call it begging. I like to call it interviewing. But I was at 50, I was like, enough of this. I want to experience true love and I want to really build a life with someone. And so I realized that process starts with, well, you got to define exactly what you're looking for. What does she look like physically? What are her characteristics? And then who do I need to become to attract her? And then the third part of it is it's purely a numbers game. And so I would, there's so many ways you can hire a matchmaker, which I did. an actual matchmaker. And it was truly a numbers game. And I'd go out to lunch with them. And unless they were wife material, I wouldn't ask them out on the date. And it was just simple to do it. And so that's how I met her.
Oh, wow.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
Thank you for sharing that, because here at this podcast, where so much of the conversation is focused on business or career, life is not just the work we do. And I think leadership encompasses a much larger swath of our lives. We're really talking about self-leadership. We're talking about making decisions that are going to directly influence how each of us shows up every day to the work we do, to the relationships we have, to the new relationships we want to build. And I love that you got clear on who exactly you were looking for, right? And again, this is not taught. So many people go through life thinking, I've got all this book knowledge. Oh, I've got this degree. Oh, I did this and that. I followed the blueprint that the culture set forth, but then wake up one day, and it could be at 50 like it was for you. It could be at 26. It could be at 33. I mean, it's like, this is not what I want. And until you find this information, what I love so much about your story, John, is you found it, right? It's like you knew something was wrong and you went looking. What's the book? You started with Think and Grow Rich, and it changed everything.
Right.
That's why I love that story so much.
Well, and this is probably a good time to get right into, well, how does this thing work? I mean,
how does it work? Yeah.
Right. So let me set the problem, and then I'm going to tell you the solution. We all have two fundamental problems in life. One is that we're innately wired for survival, which means that we're fear-based and reactive. And, of course, 5,000 years ago, when there was danger around every corner, that was great. That's exactly how you want to be fear-based. You want to be reactive. But it's exactly the opposite of the way you want to be if you want to be productive, creative, and happy in the modern world. Okay? So there's problem number one. Then problem number two is what we already said, that 95% of your daily actions are unconscious. So you consciously do not have control over the vast majority of your actions, and they're innately wired to be fear-based and reactive. And so, what that really means is that when you open your eyes each morning, you're on autopilot most of the day, innately wired to be fear-based and reactive. And that causes you to play the game of life at 20% of your potential. And so that's the problem. Now here's the solution. The book, Think and Grow Rich, tells you, okay, there's a secret. But half of the secret he gives you is that everything starts with a thought. Well, I read that and I'm like, where the heck do I go with that? Right? And I'm like, I agree with it, but where do I go with it? Well, once I dug in, what I realized the full secret to Think and Grow Rich is what you envision in detail on a daily basis is what shows up in your life. And what that means is you take your life, you step back and you establish immense clarity. Here's exactly the person I want to be. Here's exactly what I want to accomplish. And here's precisely how I'm going to achieve my clearly defined goals. And so I've created a template to accomplish all that and to articulate that all succinctly. And so you create that clarity, then you put it on this template, or you could create your own template if you wanted to. And then you feed that clarity to yourself every day. Well, after about 21 days, then the magic happens. The subconscious mind starts accepting what you're feeding it, and it starts influencing those unconscious daily actions. And then those enhanced, improved unconscious daily actions create the life you want. It's just powerfully simple.
It is powerfully simple. And the key to what you just said is you've got to consistently show up to it every day for 21 days. There's no shortcuts, right? People want, they want the hack, right? Just get me to the end result. Well, that's not how this works. It's not how this works. It's not leapfrogging ahead. Although if you've ever read Price Pritchard's book, U Squared, you can have quantum leaps. You don't recognize that necessarily you're in one until after it happened.
Right.
Isn't that's part of the paradox here?
Right. Well, and here's the other thing, Mary Lou, to appreciate. I mean, the science behind this is surprisingly simple. And
yes.
And here's how the human mind works. The conscious mind sets your intention and is influenced by logic. The subconscious mind controls your everyday actions and is influenced only by repetition. And as an example of that, let's say you want to lose weight. Well, the conscious mind sets the intention to lose weight based on the logic of the health benefits. But it's the subconscious mind that actually controls your action, your eating, your exercising. And the reason most people don't lose weight is certainly not from lack of intention. It's from the lack of influencing your actions through the subconscious mind. And that's why this 12-minute a day gives your subconscious mind that repetition that it requires. And when you start doing this, at first, it's going to reject it. I remember one of the things we were talking about relationships. One of the things when I first got married, I discovered that every once in a while, Ginger would say something irritating. Now, I know probably in your marriage that never happens, but
I've never had any irritation in any relationship.
Right. I'm sure you haven't. Well, I'm like, man, it was so hard to get this girl to marry me, any girl to marry me. I damn sure don't want to lose her. And so I decided I'm going to feed myself that I'm flexible, patient, and thoughtful every day. Mm-hmm. And so I do that. And, 15 days in, hey, I'm no more flexible, patient, and thoughtful than I was at the start. But around the 21st day, Ginger says something irritating. And Mary Lou, in that moment, I'm flexible, patient, and thoughtful. Mm-hmm. That's who I had become from programming myself. I didn't have to think about it. And again, it happened automatically without thinking. And so that's the essence of this is that the only way you can influence your daily actions is through repetition. And you have to feed to yourself being specific about what you want. If you feed to yourself general things, the subconscious mind doesn't know what to do with that. It only responds to things that are specific.
It's true. And I know from having conversations with just people in general over the years, not necessarily here at PYP, but the whole idea of being so specific is really hard for a lot of people. Going back to what you're talking about, the fear-based reactions, their immediate response is, oh my gosh, if I make this so specific, I'm eliminating everything else. And that's exactly what you want to do, because again, the paradox is that when you build very specific boundaries around yourself in the form of specifications about the home you'd like to live in, for example, the car you'd like to drive, the kind of work you'd like to do, the kind of person you would like to be in a marriage with, or, your forever person, right?
Right.
When you get so concrete and specific, and then those things show up for you, suddenly you have the most freedom you've ever had in your life.
Right.
It's
exactly.
The craziest thing. It's because I don't really know anybody that really wants to date a whole bunch of people. Number one, it's exhausting.
Right.
Number two, it becomes, you're sitting there, you get so jaded so quickly because, people want a forever person.
Right.
That's been my experience. They might say, oh, especially guys, no offense to guys, but it's the big joke, like, oh, you're settling down. You're going to only have the one woman and everything. And a lot of guys go, yeah, that's exactly what I want.
Right.
I don't want to be out here in this weird space of who is this person? They want to have that companion. And yes, that companion, that friend, that, that lover, that mate is going to be irritating sometimes, but not to the point of like, I can't deal with this.
Well, right. And I tell you, the thing that is amazing to me, I mean, once I started doing this and, I started, making $5 million a year, quickly I get enough money. And at first it was about the money, although I met Ginger more or less at the same time, because, if it was affecting that part of my life at the very same time, it's impacting my income. But,
yes.
What I really came to appreciate is the real beauty of this is the level of control it gives you over your life. And think about this, if you're feeding the succinct articulation of your life to yourself every day, of course it gives you a feeling of control. And for the entrepreneurs out there, I learned that there were 7 key habits that were required to net 7 figures a year. And so I'd feed that to myself, but it gave me this immense sense of control over my life. And every day, because I had that level of control, I had confidence. And, most entrepreneurs I find are scattered and fear-based. And this is only 1,000 times better way to be an entrepreneur than that out of control entrepreneur.
Yes. I think, in all fairness, what you teach, John, is applicable to every situation. I mean, even people who aren't running their own show, aren't entrepreneurs.
Right.
I mean, you could be a freelancer, which is a form of entrepreneurship, but it's
Sure.
really more of self-employment. You could
Right.
work for somebody. And you could be a teacher, for example, like you are. Even though you have your own business, you're also a teacher, and that you're working for a university or an educational system. It's really a mindset, and it works in every situation. And I can't tell you how exciting it is to talk to someone like you who has a story as profound as yours, who can really say, this is my before and after, very distinct. Before,
Right.
after, before, after. And that it is simple and it is science. And,
Right.
in the game of football, which I know you love because we were talking about it, as do I,
Right.
there are, elements of science at play and physics, of course, but there's also elements that are beyond our control, no matter how much you sit there, because there's no team that goes out on the field that's like, well, we're just going to lose today. I mean, every team goes out
Right.
with the mindset of we're going to win, and not every, one team loses, right? So
Right.
we're at the part of the show I call Touchdown, and I would love for you to tell us a story here in a second. But first, let me set up the context. You are down by 4 points. There are less than 30 seconds left on the clock. It is now or never, John, for you to help lead your team into the end zone for the game-winning touchdown. So could you tell us a story about a time when that happened for you, metaphorically speaking? What did you do? What was the play that you ran? And, why do you consider it such a high point of your life?
Well, I think that 4 minutes left is the analogy of being 50 years old. And I really saw that I had to grab a hold of myself and fix the problem. I couldn't put it off any longer or blame anybody else for it. And what I saw was different with this methodology really was, everybody else in the success and human achievement field and the coaching field teaches people strategies and oftentimes really good strategies. But we got great strategies coming out our ears. And what we need is to get great strategies to show up in our daily thoughts and actions. And so when I turn 50 and I'm like grabbing a hold of my life and understanding what that meant, and then I understand that 95% of my daily actions are unconscious, then I'm like, oh, okay, this has getting way easier now. And so that was the game plan with 4 minutes left in the game. I'm going to influence those unconscious daily actions.
Man, that coming back to that 95%, that to me is just kind of smacked me in between the eyes of like, wow, 95%. And again, I'm aware of the power of the subconscious mind and how it drives us, but I hadn't heard that statistic. And so, if 95% of what we do is unconscious, only 5% of what we do is conscious. And yet so many people, I think, have fooled themselves. I raised my hand for years. I thought I'm doing great. But underneath it all, I wasn't happy. I was still searching. I knew there was something else out there for me. And it wasn't until, like you, I was introduced to this world of personal development, and Think and Grow Rich was floated in front of me. I remember I didn't like it when I first read it.
Right.
I didn't really get it. But, so even those kinds of things, it takes the repetition of, hey, this book keeps showing up in my life.
Right.
There's got to be something here. There's got to be, yeah.
And I tell you, sometimes people say to me, well, it won't work on me.
Oh.
Well, I'm like, this works on everybody because it's pure science. It cannot not work. But as I say that, it's not for everyone because the essence of the book is you create immense clarity, and then you feed that clarity to yourself 12 minutes a day. And then after 21 days, it impacts your daily actions. Well, the 12 minutes a day is easy. The hard part is creating that clarity.
Yes.
And while I help my clients with that, I won't take somebody as a client unless I see that they are really driven. And I don't know, I may have told you this, one time when we talked before, I showed this to Darren Hardy and because I thought he was the top expert in the world on success. And he looks at it, he says, wow, this is really good. But he says, John, people aren't going to spend 12 minutes a day on this. And I'm like, Darren, how can that be? At 25x my income, science on this was on the cover of Time magazine. We're applying the central concept to the top book in the world on success. He says, John, the dirty little secret of the success and human achievement field is that most people won't do anything to impact their success in life because it's only merely a preference to be more successful. And he says, you got to show this to people that are driven. Those are the people that'll spend the time to create the clarity. Those are the people that will stick with the 12 minutes a day. And that was so enlightening.
Oh, that's profound. And for those of you who don't know who Darren Hardy is, he's a best-selling author, but he was also, I don't know if he still is, he was the editor of Success Magazine.
Right.
And really phenomenal human. And 100% what he told you is spot on. I think, I learned this young. It's it's a weird phrase, but you can't walk a dead dog. You can't.
That's good.
You can't walk a dead dog. You have to find the dogs that want to go for the walk, and then and I'm not comparing people to dogs, of course, but you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like you want to find the people that have that spark already, and maybe they just haven't been shown the gateway to walk through, right? And
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. But, it shows you how naive I was,
Sure.
3 or 4 years ago. I'm like, I have a way to make people way more successful. Everybody's going to want this. Wrong.
Yeah.
And that's why once he told me that, and then I lived it, I saw that this isn't for everybody because it's not everybody is driven to have more success. But boy, I tell you, those people that know that they're driven, they love it.
Oh, I love that. And there, it's such a relief to be able to let that go and recognize this is not about me, that they're not doing something with this, right? It's like I think our natural inclination is when we discover a secret or we discover something that works for us, we just want to shout it from the rooftops and like beat it into the people we love. Like, you've got to do this. It's like anything else. Until a person wants it for themselves, you're just talking. You're just talking, right. And it's going in one ear and out the other. And I think we lead by example. So maybe by, you just kind of go, okay, no problem. Not, I'm living my life this way. And so they might see and come back around a year, 2, 4, 5 years later and say, you know what, John, I think I'm ready for what you've got now. Because I see what you're doing,
Right. Well, yeah. and too quick, you hit on something that really resonated with me. You talk about leadership of self. Well, our parents never learned leadership of self. And they don't teach leadership in grade school or high school. And it's the foundation of everything. You got to learn to lead yourself to create success. And I have a little gift for your audience. If they're
please.
If they're interested in this, here's sort of the entry point. I teach people how to set aside time to just think 2 times a week. Now, this is what I call deep thinking, not regular thinking. In fact, I just showed it. I taught it to all the head coaches at the University of Texas a couple of months ago, and they're like, "Hey, we think all the time." I'm like, "Guys and ladies, wait a minute. You're thinking all the time, but you're shallow thinking. Let me show you the power of deep thinking." And this is, of course, a habit that the top people in the world like Bill Gates and Elon Musk do. But here's how it works, and this is how I'm going to give it to your audience. So you pick the 2 times a week you're going to do it. I pick Wednesdays and Sunday mornings. Then you pick, where am I going to do it? You want to pick your most comfortable place at your house or in nature. And then each thinking session, you're going to have your thinking tablet, which is basically a leather-bound tablet with a leather-bound folder with blank sheets of paper. And so when you sit down and start your thinking sessions, again, 2 times a week, each session is about 30 minutes, 3 steps to this. First step, write whatever comes to you. Just free form it. Stuff will come. That'll last 5 to 10 minutes. Second part is you figure out a question to ask yourself, and then write down whatever the question you figure out, and then over the next 20 minutes, answer that question. And that automatically causes the brain to go deeper. And then with the last thing you write, you draw a line under it, list the 2 or 3 takeaways, then the 2 or 3 action steps, and then you take those action steps and put them on next week's to-do, so you're connecting your thinking to your taking action. And the reason this works is because, you get your week going on Mondays and you have a lot coming at you, and you're talking to people and you're hearing things. And in the moment, Mary Lou, you don't necessarily know the significance of what you just heard, but you give your subconscious mind an output venue. Just watch what happens, because then when you do your thinking session on Wednesday, you go, wow, I talked to John and he said such and such. Now I see how this plays out in my life, or how I can use it. And it's such a good game changer. And so if your audience will go to thinkitbeit.com/podcast, you'll see I'll teach you how to do it. I've got a short video. And I give you a PDF that explains sort of how to do it. But it's sort of the first step to this whole idea of influencing your subconscious mind.
That's fantastic. What a gift. And so that link will be on your show notes page, John at pyppodcast.com. And again, great gift, great little thing to add to your life. Shake things up and do some deep thinking. It's very, very powerful. And as has this conversation been today, is there somewhere else you hang out online, John, that people could connect with you if they were interested?
I don't know that I hang out online.
Yeah, you're out and about in the real world, which is really cool.
Well, I think social media it does more damage than good. But in all seriousness, if they're interested, just John at thinkitbeit.com, and if you got questions, send me a question. Love to help you. And again, I love what you're doing. I mean, what you're doing is so cool, and that's why I'm honored to be on your show.
Well, I'll tell you, our mutual friend Tommy Breedlove, who is one of PYP's most prolific guests, he's been on the show 3 or 4 times. If you haven't heard my conversations team with Tommy, I'll put links to those conversations because he's just an absolute gem of a human. He wrote the book Legendary. He runs these phenomenal retreats at a beautiful space in Georgia, which I think he and his wife just opened not that long ago. And you, John, were telling me you were fortunate enough to be at one of these retreats not that long ago.
Just last week. And as I told you before we went on, I was shocked by something I learned, which was that there were 10 men there, me included. Well, 9 of the 10 have negative thoughts. I mean, a negative self-talk going on. And I'm like, wow. And one of the guys even said to me, says, this self-talk, I'll say things to myself that I wouldn't put up with other people saying to me. And I told them, all of them, I said, we got to fix this. This is no way to live, life is hard enough without you piling on and telling you you're not good enough or you're not smart enough. That is BS. Let's fix that. Jeez.
Yeah. It is. It's amazing. I mean, that's an entirely different conversation, but I'm glad that you pointed that out because I guarantee you, I mean, all of us have those moments, right? But to have it be perpetual, it is changeable.
Right.
You are not destined to have negative self-talk your entire life. And that's part of it's a big part of your mission, certainly, John, and it also is Tommy's, which is why he connected you to me. And I'm just so grateful that we were able to talk today. And before we say goodbye, would you share with us who your team is? Who do you watch on Saturday and or Sunday?
Well, of course, the University of Texas. And
Longhorns.
Longhorns. And, we got a new coach, Steve Sarkisian, and great guy, and
he's been through his own journey.
Right. And that's part of why he got the gig. And, we even talked to Urban Meyer about taking over the Texas program, but Sarkisian was a better choice. And I tell you, I'm a lifelong football fan, and to get to know him, like I had him and a couple of the other coaches come over to my house and Ginger cooked lasagna, and we had this mastermind. And Nice. It was so cool to get into his head about how are you going to build this program? How are you building your culture? What is your culture? And so it was fascinating.
Oh, that's great. Well, we are not in football season right now, but all of us football fans anticipate the start of football camps in August, and for college football fans like you and me, those preseason games, and it's just always so exciting. So yeah. This has been great, John. I wish you continued success, and thank you again for the work that you do to help all of us become better at playing our positions.
Yes, thank you.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number one in football changes from year to year. Fashion trends come and go, same with musical tastes. But leadership skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential survival skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you love with people you like the way you want. The Play Your Position Leadership Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to pyppodcast.com to download your copy today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Leadership Playbook now. pyppodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's pyppodcast.com, and start being more of the leader you are meant to be today. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at pyppodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.